Hi guys, my name is Brandy and welcome to my channel, Sewing Back. We are in my kitchen and I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about fermenting foods and why it's important. And I'm going to show you probably one of the easiest things that you can ferment, and it might be a little different than what you've seen or heard other places, because fermenting foods are going to get your body those rich probiotics into your gut, which are very important. But if you do not feed the probiotics, prebiotics, they doesn't make any difference, okay? They have to be fed. You want to build what they call a symbiotic relationship. And what that means is a food that has the symbiotic relationship is going to have both the prebiotic and the probiotic in it. You're doing the same thing if you're trying to grow healthy soil in your garden. You want that symbiotic relationship in your soil so that it's living soil and so that it can produce life. That's what you want in your gut. You want to have that kind of a relationship that you're building for health so that you can build life, a good life. And so last week I had put up a video. I had tried some new ways of doing a couple of fermentations. My typical way that I have done is just the saltwater brine, okay? And I don't know if you can see, I've got bubbles. I don't know if it's clear to see those, it's kind of dark, but there are bubbles coming all up. This has been fermenting for about 10 days now. These are jalapenos. There are some seeds, most of the seeds I took out. And the way that I made this a symbiotic relationship, meaning that I had the probiotic and the prebiotic, is so I have my jalapeno peppers, I have my saltwater brine, and I added garlic. Garlic is a prebiotic. It feeds that probiotic in your gut. And so just by adding that garlic to this gives me a symbiotic food, gut health food, okay? So now that was different than how I did some of these other ones. This one, I did put garlic in this one. I think I put garlic in all of them just because we like garlic. But I also did something else. There's another food that is the prebiotic if you're trying to build a symbiotic relationship for gut health. And that is, I used apple cider vinegar with the mother. And so I did a portion that was the apple cider vinegar, I think it was a cup of apple cider vinegar with the mother, to the cup, or actually I think it was a cup, it might have been a little bit more, of the saltwater brine. And so these have been fermenting. We actually have not tried these. These also have bubbles. Like I said, it's hard to see. But those also have been going. We did that same brine. These were all peppers, and I did stick a few green tomatoes in here because I had a few extras on top. As you can tell, we've been eating on these. The green tomatoes are delicious. I was a chicken and I didn't eat the peppers. They're pretty hot. John loves them though. So these are all going well. We also did try out of the big pickling jar. This one, we did try some of the green tomatoes out of here, and they're really good. So these really are to the place in their fermentation to where we like them. We like the taste. So these are all fixing to go into the refrigerator, and we'll just be eating on them, okay? All of these have that symbiotic relationship for good gut health. It's very important. So my husband, I have been doing sourdough now since, after being gluten-free for about 12 years, because I had some health issues, and I started milling my own ancient grains, and I built a sourdough starter. Oh, here it is. I built a sourdough starter on December 26, 2020. And I just fed this. You can see a few of the little bubbles. It'll be all bubbled up and up to the top by tomorrow. But this is my sourdough starter. But my husband's asked me, he's like, well, how is that good for your gut? Because you're gonna cook it when you bake the bread. Well, another ingredient that is a prebiotic to the probiotic, so this is fermenting, okay? This is a fermentation. So the prebiotic, guess what it is? Grains. Grains are a prebiotic. And so when you do that and you sour those grains and you're using the whole grain, guess what? It's very digestible. And not only is it very digestible, but it's also very nutritious because it has digested maybe the parts that are harder for you to digest, and it has fed that probiotic, that prebiotic has fed that, and then it has let all of those B vitamins, all of it goes directly into your bloodstream. And that is why this is a fantastic way to get good gut health, because it has the symbiotic relationship. It has the pre and the pro. And it's also so incredibly nutritious for you. It has over 44 of the vitamins and minerals that we need to live. And so, and if it's more digestible, then that's even all the better for you. Now, this would not work if you are celiac. That is a sickness. They cannot digest it. They have other health things going on. Now, could they use a sourdough and gluten-free ancient grains? Absolutely. You could totally do that. And you would build the symbiotic relationship because grains are the pre, and you would just build that fermentation. So if you're going to the store and you're like, well, is there anything I can buy that's going to have that relationship? There are two things. If they have live active cultures that you can get at your local grocery store, health food store, whatever, Walmart, wherever you go. You can get it in yogurt. You can get it in kefir. They have both the pre and the probiotic. These beautiful, beautiful heads of cabbage. And I'm going to take these, clean them, and I'm going to show you how to make sauerkraut. Now, sauerkraut is all you're going to add to this is you're going to clean it, then you're going to, you can either cut it up in a food processor, really small pieces if you like it that way. I like to cut it kind of in ribbons, and all you're going to do is put salt and break it down, there is enough water and moisture in here. You don't need to add the water. And over days, weeks to a month or longer, depending on how sour you like it, you can make sauerkraut. Now, that is a fermentation. That is a probiotic. How am I going to make it symbiotic? I'm going to include some garlic, just a little bit. You could probably also include, if you didn't want to do garlic, you could totally do like an apple cider vinegar. Not a ton, but just some. And that would be a way to make it a symbiotic sauerkraut, which is going to be the best form of a probiotic for your gut. So I am going to clean these. They're dirty, so I need to make sure I clean them, take the top leaves off. I give those to my chickens. And then I have a massive 2-gallon crock. Oh, it is so heavy. I can barely lift it. But it is from the Ohio Stone Company. It was a gift, and it has the big weights. And so I'll take a picture of it because I don't think you can see it from here, and I can't lift it up. But I love the crock because no little flies, bugs, anything, which that's not really an issue this time of year. You can get in it, but like in the spring and summer, it can be an issue. But this was given to me, it was a gift, and I love it. My only thing is I kind of wish I had the 1-gallon one because this one is so heavy. But I'm going to show you how you can make your own sauerkraut. It is super easy to do. not sauerkraut, but cabbages are becoming quite plentiful as we're in, moving well into our fall season. They are a cool weather crop. So good for you. And like I said, when you're fermenting it, if you don't want it super sour because you didn't like it as a kid super sour, then you just don't ferment it as long. Maybe you only let it go for a week and then you put it in the refrigerator. And once it's in the refrigerator, it's going to slow down that souring process, but it's still going to have those live gut feeding bacteria that you want. It's going to have that symbiotic relationship to give you good health. And going into flu, cold season, this is a great time to really start working on your gut health. And it is important. And all of us can have improvement in this area because we live in the world on planet Earth. And we come in contact with all kinds of things. Some things on purpose, some things just by being out in the environment, and because, we live here. And that's just part of living. And so those things in the environment, things we consume that maybe are not the best things. None of us are perfect and eat everything perfectly. And even if you do now, you haven't your whole life. And because none of us knew these things. A lot of this stuff there's just so many things they're finding out about gut health and how important it is. So I hope that you will do some of your own research on gut health. I hope that you'll consider giving some of these things a try. I know that when I first started doing it, we were like, oh, I felt like, it was a little weird and wasn't sure. And I grew up hating sauerkraut because I had only had sauerkraut from the grocery store or in a can. I'd never had like real kraut. And so when I made my own, I'm like, this is good. This is delicious. I love it. I love cabbage. So it was baffling to me why I didn't like it. You can also put spices in it if you want to spice it up. You could also go an Asian route and go and make kimchi. Again, just think about if you're doing that, you're adding those things. Remember, you can add garlic. You can add the other parts to make it prebiotic. I don't know about you, but I don't like getting sick. I don't like being sick. I know that it's inevitable. Sometimes I'm going to get sick, but I want to do everything that I can do to try to make that as easy as possible on myself, particularly as I age, because it gets harder and harder the older you get. And because the truth of it is, none of us are going to live forever, not on this side of heaven, but we do want to live a good life. We want to live with a purpose, and we can't do that if we're sick and we're not taking care of ourselves. These are really pretty easy things that you can do. I will link the video of when I did the fermentation of the peppers. I am going to actually do a video series on starting a sourdough from a kit. I have that, and how to do that. That is going to be coming up. So if you've wanted to start your own sourdough, if you don't have a mill, you don't have a mill. You can still get whole grain, the best quality flour that you can get to make your breads, and use a sourdough. And I'll go through all of that and save up, and when you can, hopefully you'll be able to get a mill for yourself so you can grind your own grains. Or maybe some people are finding out they actually live close enough to places where they can get it done. So that's also an option. But anyway, I am going to Randy here. We're back in the kitchen. I started this video night before last. It got late and I didn't get to actually fermenting my cabbage by making sauerkraut. And so it was just late. I was tired and that happens. And so I am at it today, and I washed the cabbage really well. I have two about the same size. I went ahead and cored them to make it easier, because I prefer to do more of a slicing with like ribbons. Some people really like to use their food processor and chop it up really small. We've done that. If you do that method, it is a little bit faster to, as you put that salt in, to get that brine started if it's broke up more. But long term, like eating it, we have found we prefer kind of like the ribbon slicing, and I'll show you that when I get to cutting it. The other thing I wanted to talk about is what is the ratio when you're making sauerkraut. And so essentially you are going to take, you're going to measure, not whole, because you're going to have parts of your cabbage you're not going to use. You're not going to use the core. You're going to remove a lot of the outer leaves. I've already done all that on mine. I just take those and feed that to the chickens. But that's going to affect your weight. So once you get it to this stage, like this, it is very helpful if you have a scale of some sort. This is one my husband picked up years ago at Goodwill. It's a Weight Watcher scale, and it works great. I use this all the time. I've used this when I taught for science experiments, and I use it with my sourdough. We've used it to make soap. It's just a handy thing to have, and I think you pay under $5 for it at Goodwill. You can get them, you know, at Walmart, places like that, pretty inexpensively. But if you're in Goodwill, check there first, because it's usually cheaper. So on my scale, I'm going to put my cabbage and weigh it. And this is done in grams. Most scales you can convert it to ounces. I'm leaving it in grams because I've just gotten comfortable doing that with my sourdough. So this head of cabbage is 1,912 grams, okay? So it's pretty close. I'm going to round that up to say it's 2,000 grams. So that 2,000 grams of cabbage, to ferment it safely, you're going to have to use 0.02% of salt. You may be thinking, math? Yes, math. So essentially all you're going to do is you're going to take 2,000, you're going to multiply that times 0.02. You can put that in your phone. And you're going to hit your equals button. You can do it by hand if that's your thing. And you're going to come out with, if you have 2,000 grams of cabbage, you're going to need 40 grams of real salt. Real salt meaning not iodized salt, not table salt. So you can use a kosher salt, you can use a pickling salt, you can use Redmond's real salt. I like that. That's what I have. Pink Himalayan salt. But it can't be the iodized. It will not ferment. So that salt's off the table. But all others are you're good. So I have one cabbage that's 1,916 grams. I'm going to see what the other one is. And it is 2,171 grams. So between my two heads of cabbage, I have roughly, I'm going to have roughly 4,000 grams of cabbage, which is going to mean I'm going to need 80 grams of salt, okay? And you can take your food scale here and you can weigh out the salt so that you have that, and that's what you're going to need. That is the safe ratio for fermenting your sauerkraut. Now, if you do some research, you will find some people will say you don't have to use that much salt, you can do 1.5%. Other people say you do 2.5%, but through my research, what I found is it's pretty typical that, and I even have in a couple books on fermentation, that 0.02% is where most people fall as to what is safe. So that's what I'm going with, and so that's, I wanted you to know how you do that. Because what if you go to the store and you're not going to do two big old heads of cabbage, you just got one small or medium cabbage, at your local grocery store or farmer's market, what have you. And once you peel off those outer leaves, you take the core out, you don't have a very big cabbage. You don't need that. You can still sour it, you can still make it into kraut. And honestly, doing smaller batches are kind of fun because you can kind of gauge what you like, how much sourness you like. Do you want to put some peppers in it? Do you want to add like a caraway seed into it, or dill, or any of those kinds of things? You can kind of play around with those things on a smaller scale. You're not necessarily going to want to do that when you're dealing with like 4,000 grams of cabbage, because what if you do it and you're like, yuck, I don't like that. And so it's better to do it on a smaller scale. So you have and I'll put in the description, the calculation. You take that calculation, and no matter how much you have, it will tell you how much you need of the salt so that you're doing a safe ferment. All right, so the other thing I wanted to talk about that I did when I started the video was having that symbiotic relationship, meaning you're going to have the prebiotic with the probiotic. So when you ferment your kraut, you're going to have that's a good gut healthy probiotic. So if you're wanting to ferment it and make it so that it also includes that prebiotic, so you have that whole relationship intact as it's going into your body so that you get the most nutrients, you can add some things. So I wanted to tell you a couple things. I've already told you about yogurt and kefir, that they both have the pre and the probiotics in them, but I wanted to give you some items that are prebiotics. I think I've already named a few, but garlic, I told you that's a big one. Onions, leeks, artichokes, asparagus, I've already said bananas, chicory root, honey, that would be raw honey, unpasteurized vinegar with the mother, I think I've already mentioned vinegar, whole grains, and soybeans. For some people, whole grains could be an issue, but don't take them off the table, because even if you do have gluten issues, there are gluten-free whole grains that you can totally use that would offer you that prebiotic health, okay? So this is just one head sliced up. I have a 2-gallon crock right here, and I measured out my 40 grams of Redmond's real salt. I have that here. And this is what you call, well, there's a couple different names. Some people call it a kraut masher. Some of it call it a pounder. Other people call it a fermentation tool. Some people will call it somewhere in between those. But essentially, this has two sides. So if you're using like in a mason jar and you're trying to push down, this will fit that side. But if you have something bigger or a wide mouth, then you can use this side. I actually even have a bigger one. And yes, I keep it next to the side of my bed, so if somebody comes in, I'm gonna hit you on the head with it. So don't wake me up at night. But anyway, so what I want to go ahead and do, because when you make sauerkraut, you're not going to add any water. There is plenty of water in this kraut once the salt starts drawing that out. So I'm going to start putting in my kraut here into this crock, and I'm not putting it all. I've got it here, and I'm also adding, I hinted at, or I may have said, I'm sorry, I don't remember. I have garlic, raw garlic, and I am going to, for my garlic, I'm not going to put it in whole. I'm actually going to grate it up, a clove here and there as I'm going through this, because I want to have that good relationship in my kraut. Now this is totally optional. You don't have to put garlic in. You don't have to put anything in other than the salt and get this going. And it is up to you. This is what I want. I know that we like fermented garlic. If you make sure you like it before you do it this way. Like I said, small batches are good because then if you don't like it, you don't feel like you've wasted a whole. So this is what it looks like right now. You can see that water, that it's getting wet. That salt is drawing out the moisture. And I'm going to work on this for just a few more minutes, and then I'm going to cover it with a towel while I cut the other cabbage. Okay, so this is both heads of cabbage in here. Also, if you have like one of these heavy duty high heat spoons, you could totally use this as well. If you don't have that the pounder, masher, fermentation tool, you can totally use this. But I've got both of them in here. I think I put about 6 to 7 cloves of garlic that I minced up with my microplane. They're in here. I did put a little bit of the brine from my hot peppers that I fermented. And I'm just gonna let this sit for right now. I am going to go ahead and put the weight. I have the weights that go with this. I'll show you that in just a second. But I will be checking it throughout the day. If you do not have weights, this goes with this crock, so it would just sit down. It will push the cabbage down. These are pretty heavy. You can do fermentation weights if you want, but in all honesty, I have a bag over here I'm going to take to the chickens. You could totally take some of the leaves, the big leaves that they're a little bit more fibrous. You wouldn't necessarily want those in your kraut, and you can fold them up and you can push them down and allow them to be your weight. And then if you put it in a mason jar with a lid, while it's fermenting, you will want to burp it. You don't want those gases to build up inside that lid. If you have the little, mine are all in dishwasher because I just put my ferments in the fridge. If you have the little nipple ones that have the cut so it can or even there's the locks that you can get so that it can allow that to come out, then you don't have to do that step. But you do have to do it if you're just using like a band and a lid for a mason jar, or if you're doing like an old spaghetti lid or whatever, you need to burp it. For this, I don't really burp it because it is in this crock. You can add water to cover it. However, it cannot be tap water. It needs to be like a distilled water, a Berkey water, or some kind of filtrated water, so that you know that you're not going to kill the ferment with things that are in your local city waters. So I typically with kraut have never really had to add water. There's usually plenty of water in the cabbage. It just takes a little bit of time. So you just want to kind of keep an eye on it. I will do an overhead so you can see right now what mine looks like with the weights, and I will update it over the next 12 to 24 hours to see how long it takes to get that liquid up over the top of my kraut. For us personally, we really like about the 3 week to a month. If you found this helpful, if you found the information helpful, or the how to do this part helpful, I would appreciate a thumbs up. If you like this content, we would love it if you would join our channel by subscribing. And if you know someone, maybe this is their jam as well, we'd love for you to share that. I hope you have a great one, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye. Okay guys, it's been about 3 hours, maybe 3.5. Can you see that? All the liquid coming up. It'll just keep doing that. That's why I say you think you need to add water to it. You don't. There's so much water in cabbages naturally. So this will just keep going, and we'll start taste testing it in about 3 weeks, and we'll go from there. I hope you have a great one. Bye.